There we go. Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for having me back. It's been a while. I was here, gosh, back when you were at the Gallery IQ location. I did a demo. So a lot of you probably don't even know what that is. But anyhow, so happy to be back. I am a scratchboard artist. Scratchboard is a special type of board, and we scratch on it. So that, I mean, it's pretty redundant. But I draw with a knife. Number 16 exacto, trying to get it in. There we go. Because it's too bright. And the boards have a, so they look like this to start with. Number 16, 16, 1-6. The boards are black. Underneath the black, it's all white. So this, if you scratch this, you just get more white. But under the black is this. So I'm scratching the black to get the white. So basically I'm drawing white with a knife. That's usually the easiest way to explain it. And then I explain further so people understand. So drawing white with a knife. Scratching the black away reveals the white. The white will take color. So this is the piece where I would do all the scratching. Every drawing is different. I was probably 90% done with the drawing as a black and white drawing with values of gray. And then I added color.
What do you add color with?
You can use either colored ink, watercolor, really, really thin acrylics. If you use acrylics that are too thick, those of you that know acrylic, it's kind of plasticky. I know that's a really technical term, but it wouldn't scratch well. But if you thin it with water, it'll scratch okay. I prefer watercolor. It's just easier. If I'm teaching workshops, everybody's got watercolor almost.
So do you lay down the color and then scratch into the color itself?
I will, yeah. I will get the drawing 90% done, 80 to 90% done. It's just the black and white, and then I'll add the color. I don't have one here that's partially scratched. All right. Well, this one, for example, and this is just getting started. It's a bird on an arena fence line on a chain, a rusty chain. So I will get this drawing to be a black and white drawing with all the values that I need. I print a grayscale photo for almost everything I do because that helps me see the values. But the color one helps me see what I'm looking at. So if I'm working on this and I can't tell, is that a chain? Is it shadow? Is it the background that I'm not worried about? And then I look at the color one. And then I'll use the color one down the road when I'm ready to add color. But I mainly use this to get the bulk of it done.
You take all these photos yourself?
As many as I can. Yeah, the question was if I take all the photos myself. I try to take as many as I can. But sometimes there's a subject I don't have a photo of, and I'll contact the photographer. I've got friends that are photographers, so they usually let me use their photos. I try not to use anything online because that's copyright issues unless you can get specific permission from the artist or the photographer, then you're okay. But that's a slippery slope. So I try and take my own photos specifically. Yeah. So what I'm working on here, because I want to pop the chain out and everything from the background, it's pretty dark. And I'm going to add color. There's a lot of shadow in it. I'm actually scratching a background that will then make the chain pop out. And the chain will all be color, so that helps as well. But I'm doing a stipple process in the background, and I'll explain that in a little bit. I work mainly on the blackboards. I do work on the whiteboards. And this is an example on a whiteboard because I didn't want to have to come in and clear off a whole bunch of black to get the really clean white. It's on the edges. So she was done on an 8x10 whiteboard. I added ink and then I scratched. So it's the same process, but you have to start with something on a whiteboard. So you have to add your own color before you scratch. Pardon? Before you scratch? Yeah. On a whiteboard, because there's nothing there to start with. Here. Well, this is kind of a sample. This is pretty sloppy. But this is a piece of the white clay board I've had forever. And I just painted watercolor on it to show people.
So you You paint directly onto the whiteboard, solid colors, and then scratch into those.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So in this case, this one took a lot of time. I actually painted this whole background solid black. Somewhere I have a little demo piece, but I think they're like right over there. And then I painted her black, anywhere on her that had a large section of black. I'll put this back over there in a minute.
Okay.
Anything that has a large section of black, I choose India ink, which is here somewhere. India ink. I like the rapidograph ink because this also goes in the technical pen, which I use. For those who know technical pens, they're those old school things you fill with ink, and they're super finicky, but they're really consistent. So on this, where the large areas of black, I actually painted black, and I wasn't worried about it being perfect. Because I could come in and scratch it to clean up. And then to get that background value, I would scratch the black, come back with the technical pen, ink the black, scratch the black till I get that smooth value. And these areas of her fur on her chest. It's weird. These areas on her chest.
Can you set it on the table?
Yeah,
We'll try that.
there we go. You can see that. The areas on her chest were just scribbles with a pen, but I came back and scratched those back. Well, it's supposed to be on my glass. So right. Oh, I can point here on the feet too. So I didn't worry about everything being perfect. That's the really nice thing about these boards. They have enough depth of play and they scratch really easily, intentionally easily. And I do seal them, so that helps protect them afterwards. But if you were to gouge these boards, you couldn't re-scratch it because you'd end up with tracks and knife would get stuck in the tracks. But I can scratch and re-ink and scratch and re-ink to get the values. And I'll pass a piece around without scratching on it. Okay, this, I'll pass this around to people here in person, they can feel it, but this piece right here, that's that little brown dot, that is actually scratched all the way down to the board itself. You never need to scratch that much. I did this intentionally. But if you were to feel this board, you would feel no scratches except for that part. So I'm going to pass this around so you can all feel it. But you see I've got whiskers on there and you can re-ink. Feel free to touch it. This was our border collie. She's been gone a while, but this was her favorite green bone. And it was just a fun piece to do. I chose not to do any color on this one. I generally don't color a board that would have this much black and white on. I might have colored her eyes, but I think even now if I did it again, I wouldn't have. It wasn't necessary on this. How long is this one, especially with that gradation background, hours and hours and hours. Something this size or 5x7 is at least 10 hours, but everyone's different. This one, still, or I can just hold it up there so they can see it. This one, the part that took the most is the smooth texture. Because I have to come in and work and rework that by scratching and maybe re-inking or adding color again. Whereas if I get the fur right, when there's fur texture, I get that dropped in, I'm pretty much done. So smooth textures take longer. So this was kind of a half and half, I think. Part of it didn't take so long, part of it took a long time. This border collie should take a long time. Something like this owl, this is a print.
Let's put that under the camera.
Put that under. Okay. Yeah, might wear a little bit.
Um,
Oh yeah. Well, I can hold it.
yeah,
Got it. So that's a print on metal. That's how I have the reproductions made. But the original was a 6x6 scratch board, and that one took not all that long to do the scratching. Some of them, when I get the scratching, I add a layer of color and I'm almost done. That one I had to layer color and scratch and color and scratch to get all these different, to bring these values back. So each drawing is different. This one with the bird is going to take quite some time because I've set myself up for a lot of work in the background. I don't do a lot of them like that. I do more that are just the owl, a little bit simpler. And I'm also trying to, make work to sell for the public. I do a lot of commission work. So those are very specific to whatever animal I'm working But just the general sales type pieces, I tend to go a little more simple. One like this is something I'll enter in shows. Whenever I get it done, it's been in progress for years. When I get it finished, it will go into some shows. So we'll work, as I said, mostly on the blackboard. There.
Sorry, Jackie.
Actually, hang on, don't worry about that.
Oh.
Sorry, Jackie. Okay, this is a good example. I'll pass this guy around. What I'm passing around is what you're seeing here. So this is a print of a piece that was done on a whiteboard. And the reason it was done on a whiteboard is because I didn't want to have to scratch away a whole bunch of black. There's not that much black on that. Well, actually, let's see. Yeah, you can see it on the screen. There's really no black on it except the tail. So this is an early stage. These are just cell phone photos. I usually scan things, but this is one I had with me. I was waiting somewhere in my car. That's the nice thing with scratchboard. All you need is your photo, your board, and you can take. I have, yeah, actually, that is not my photo. That is a zoo photo. It was a tiger at the second in the zoo. But scratchboard's nice in that it's very portable. I don't tend to work large. I wouldn't take something that large on the road, but little pieces, these sizes, I do some little miniatures. I can sit there and work on that one, waiting for my car to be finished. I'm at the doctor waiting, or whatever. And you don't need to be able to sit down at a table unless you're going to add color at some point. Then you've got watercolor. So this guy was one I was just traveling with him. I've done a little bit of scratching. Initially, I used not a technical pen. I may have used a tech pen. I also use these pens, the micron pens, readily available. This is what I use in my workshops. If I'm doing something where it has a lot of inking, I will use a technical pen. And this ink, which you can't see, there we go. Because it's purely archival. When you put this in a pen, that's all that's in the pen. These are supposed to be archival, these microns, but I don't know. So I do like the tech pens for larger areas. But on this, I inked the black parts. You see the eyes look really scary, but there's no black in there. So I'm going to add color to that. I've done some scratching on the tail. And then I use, for the initial layer of color, these Pitt art markers. They're by Faber-Castell, and they come in a bunch of different colors. I have a brush tip. And that's what I started with for the color. And I'll pass this around. No. So those were early stages. I usually put the black in first. And I came in with color. So this one, the color looks pretty rough. It's pretty dark. It's pretty rough. I'm not worried about that. I will come back in with the knife and scratch it and make it more detailed. And that's what I've done here on stage 2. It's a lot lighter, but it's also more detailed. There's just a lot more texture. These boards are really slick. In fact, I'll pass these around. Black one's going on. This is the whiteboard. The boards are really slick. So the ink or the watercolor, whatever you're laying down, doesn't go down really, it doesn't soak into like it would in watercolor paper. So it sits on the top and looks pretty rough. By scratching, I'm adding texture. So I'm putting little fine scratch lines in there. That adds texture. So the next time I come in with color, it can settle into those scratches. And then also that builds up the process of the detail. So this is first stage, pretty rough. Second stage, all scratched. Third stage, I've added color back. And I think on this one, I may have just used watercolor at this point. So going back with the pens that are pretty, they're not real fine detail. It's just been a while since I worked on it. This was adding more color. And then the final was just fine tuning the color and adding the whiskers. So the whiskers go on last. That's the final. And the print of him is sticking around, yes. Well, scratch. The back side didn't. I printed on the wrong side. Make sure you look at the other side. Waste of ink, but that's how it goes. Okay, what else I need to tell people? Oh, poster. Okay. Is there a way to send the file to you and get it included?
Might be, because, yeah,
Or you're welcome to just email it to you.
okay.
The other thing is if they go to this page of my website, there is a link to that poster on it. So
Oh,
maybe
okay.
that's the easiest way, but that QR code goes to a page on my website that has a list of all the materials that I like to use, online resources, books, a couple of things like that poster. And I think I have on there the stages that I use for this watercolor drawing. There's a lot of reference materials there. This is a piece I did a while back. Again, the color photo, the black and white reference.
We'll email out that link that you had sent me.
Okay. Yeah, which is the same as that QR code. So, but yeah, go ahead and do that. That's perfect. And you can come up and look at this later, but this just shows the steps in this drawing. And this is where someone asked about how much time things take. On this drawing, this textured pad underneath, this feet probably took nearly as much time as the dog. Because the dog is just a bunch of hair textures. This, you can see bits of it here. Yeah. Help you see come up. You can come up and look later, but I have to scratch away the black to get the texture, but it's too rough at that point. It's too linear. So then I come up with a pen and stick on top of that. And I'll scratch more. So it's just a back and forth until I get the gradation that I want.
Was that a commission?
No, this is what I just wanted to do for myself. So this guy was a canine with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department. He retired a few years ago. He did pass away, but he was in good health when he retired. Oh, awesome dog, amazing dog, really awesome. And I just seen him at an event, and I always wanted to draw something like this. So the original is a 9x12, which is large for me, so it's even bigger than this strengths. But it needed to be that big to get the detail in it. This was the case too, where the initial photo had this door was open, and I don't want to draw all the stuff that was in the door, so I found photos online that were really similar angle and just stuck the door on it.
Oh.
And I didn't put all the detail in the window, I just made it left the door. Okay, so now we'll do some scratching. Any other questions in general about? Yes.
When did you start this and how did you get it?
Okay, I've been drawing since I was a little kid, almost always animals. I did a lot of art in college, took some classes, but don't have an art. I actually have a biology degree. So I love the detail. That's where this all comes from, and animals. And I did a lot of pen and ink. I did some scratchboard in college, but it was really crappy kind of boards. You scratch it once and you're done. There's no fixing it. I took a workshop at an illustrators conference in, I think, the late 90s. And that was honestly a light bulb moment because she had really good quality boards. You could add and subtract. You weren't committed with your first scratch. A little different than what I'm using now, but very similar in that it's just a good quality board.
So when you're done with the scratching and painting, put in
Oh,
coating.
I do. Good question. Yeah, in fact, I have this. I'll pass this down. I seal it with, and again, the information about sealers is on that page of my website. I'll pass this around. So this side has not been sprayed. This side has been sprayed. So these do not need to be under glass. They could be, but they don't have to be. This protects it. It also has a UV protecting surface to it. Set that up. And then I'll pass it around. Come on. There we go. So you can see even there the shiny side versus the other side. Then I'll pass this around for everybody. It's called Let's Go. I printed and scratched it on up there. This one is under glass because it was on, oh no, because this one needed a frame around it. It needed that border defined. So it had to have a mat. The mat needs glass. That's the only reason she's frame. But she don't frame because it's extra expensive. I will frame this way. Where the scratch board is this part, it's mounted to another board. And then it's framed. So that board is.
You print a lot of boards on the metal?
I do. It's been a really fairly easy way to get things printed, and the quality is quite good. I use Bay Photo. They're in Scotts Valley. There are other companies that do it. but I've been real happy with their products. And if I get a batch that's not right, or scratches, or one whole batch where the color was off, they replace it. They're really good about that. So I do like that. And then they don't have to be framed under glass and mats and all of that. This can hang in the bathroom or kitchen. There's no problem with the moisture. Yeah, so typically I just do a float mat like that. And the products I use are ampersand. And I have samples up here. If anybody wants to take one of each. So I got into scratchboard just from that class. I always done pen and ink. So this is not a huge switch over. In pen and ink, you're drawing white on black on white, and you're getting all your values with your dots, or your cross hatching, or whatever. This is just the opposite. So you're drawing the whites instead. Questions?
Just do some scratching. Okay. Feel free to slide this. as you
Okay,
need to.
yeah, I'll do it. I'll just leave it over there. Thank you. Thank you very much. That there. And people wonder about my eyesight. I use stronger glasses to draw than I do for reading. I need reading glasses now, but I use these. I need to get a new prescription, but usually I just buy store-bought readers, but a stronger, whatever, a stronger lens than what I would use otherwise. Yes.
Question, what's the difference between the clayboard and the scratchboard? I see the samples.
Right, the clayboard is the all white, the
Okay.
scratchboard is the white with the layer of black. Those are the differences.
Okay, already had it on.
Yeah, exactly. You know, this is one where I just as a demo painted half of it black. When you're painting it on yourself, it doesn't go on nearly as smooth as what you buy. But if you're going to scratch all of this, it doesn't matter because all that gets broken up. Okay. So on this one, and what you see going on here, too. This is the arena pipe fence. And so right now I'm just breaking that out. I want it smooth. I'm just scratching it, and I'm actually using the edge of this blade. But this one may be dull. I can actually use the edge of the blade. The blade has a bevel to it. You see that? As opposed to the other type of blade, which many are familiar with, it just has a really steep point. And with this bevel blade, I can get a lot more different types of scratches than I can with just that straight blade. So here I can actually kind of scuff by holding the edge of the blade.
Did you try to do a line drawing with the blade before you start?
No, what I do, and you can see it here, these white lines are transfer lines. So I take the reference photo, print it on thinner paper. This is printed on photo paper, so it's a better quality. Thinner paper, I will put it, I'll size it, crop it, whatever I need to do it in Photoshop. I'll usually bump up the contrast a little bit to make it more amenable to scratchboard. Put that on top, and then there's a white transfer paper. It's like a white carbon paper. It goes in between the two.
Okay.
And so on the top piece, I will transfer my lines.
Okay.
And then that's what, because you don't really want edges in the scratchboard, just like you don't want black outlines when you're doing artwork generally. So this is a case here where I don't want a hard line there. I'm actually just scratching up next to it.
Okay.
And then if those lines are still left, the transfer lines, which would be, all this is transfer lines, they either get scratched away or you can use one of those gray kneaded erasers and erase
Right.
that.
Okay.
So that's how I'll get rid of them. Most of them disappear from scratching. So that basically is my roadmap. And then I just reference this to get the values I want on this drawing. So there'll be different types of scratching. This is more of the scuffing with the edge of the blade. The bird will actually be longer strokes in the direction of the feathers. And this is about life size. So I almost am drawing the actual size of the feathers. But it'll be shorter marks here. On something like the German Shepherd, they were longer strokes. It just depends on the scale of the drawing and what part of it I'm working on. Here on the tail, I've got linear marks that follow the feather pattern. And then here on the background, there's glare on it. Apologies for that. That might make it doesn't matter. That glare that's there when I spray this with sealer, that'll even everything out. I'm not too worried about it. It's not some great for your demo here. Well, I can work over here where it's not as it doesn't have as much glare. So what I'm doing here is just doing a really soft scratching, little short marks. I don't want long, hairy looking marks because this is just a stippled background. But I'm coming in and just breaking up this background. I have not yet decided how far to the edges I'm going to take that background pattern. I don't think I need to do it to the full edge, but I can make that decision at any point. What's nice about this is like, if I get tired of it or I get tired of an area on it, I can just go work on some other part. I'm not worried about where watercolor or something you have to block everything in, right? I can put this away and come back to it. When it's time to come back and break this up a little bit, when I want it not so rough looking, it's hard to explain. Easier to see on the original. People in person, sorry. But so, I mean, this is tiny, picky stuff, but there's a spot there I over scratched. I can come in with a pen. This pen is probably not working. No, it's working. And put little dots over that spot. But for whatever reason, it's not actually working too well there. But I will also do that intentionally to knock back that linear look. And I've done some of that right here. I've actually come in and added black to blend this out a little bit more. Let's see, the part that's got the fence wire on it, I've actually just clear scratch that to white. Because that is going to be a shade of wire gray that I need to paint on it. So this has many, many miles ahead of it. Lots going on, but I'm really excited about it. It's just going to take some time. It's a fun piece. And what I had to do, I had seen the bird. This is just part of the photography, the reference process. I had seen, this is on our arena fence. I had seen the bird sitting on our fence on the chain, but I couldn't get a photo of it. He just never went back. So I got other photos of same species and sized it appropriately in kind of the angles, and then just in Photoshop stuck him on there. And so this is just a second bird for reference because I didn't have the tail on this photo. There was a branch in the way. So I just pulled another reference that I had taken. And this is a case where I will go online and look at other references, but I'm not copying them. I'm just using them to see what I need to see if I don't have the photos that I need. Let's see, anything that's more dynamic to scratch. Oh yeah, this cat. Because that is not going to be very exciting. It's going to go really slowly. Cat has a little texture. So this is a 4x4. It's this width, but I've glued it onto just a backing board. So it has something to hang. I normally wouldn't do that. The edges are likely to get beat up, but the person that's getting this as a gift, I know she'll be careful with it. You normally want things in a frame, either a float frame or mounted so that it's set back a little bit so you don't ding up the edges. So for the people online. And then there's that. That's the scratch board there. This is the board, and it's just an art board that I glued it onto. And here you can see the reference photo. And then the white transfer paper would go in between the two. And you can see some of the transfer lines right here. And even though this is a black and white cat, I will scratch the black areas because I don't like to have this flat black in my subject. It just doesn't look lifelike to me. I will actually scratch.
And then add your own black.
Yeah, exactly. I'll come back in with a wash of
The Indian,
Yeah, probably just a little bit of watercolor with some purple or blue in it, just a
Okay.
hint of it,
right?
but that will knock all of this back. So you'll have texture, but it won't be harsh like this background.
Right.
So, and then here where the white's really blown out, I will put more detail in there. I don't want it that blown out, but I can just guesstimate on that. The whiskers go on last. I have this really cool tool that does just whiskers. I'll find that in a bit. So I try to layer things the way they are layered in reality. I'll tend to work from the outside in because you're putting the underneath layers first and then you're scratching other things on top of it. Also, because as I drag my hand across the board, I lose my transfer lines. That's the reason I keep this attached, to protect the art and also to go, well, what did I mean by this transfer line here? Oh, there it is in pencil. So I know what I intended when I first drew it, the transfer.
So are there different kinds of knives?
There are, this one just works great for me. The gal that taught the workshop that I took in the 90s, she was using this blade and it's worked really well for me ever since. People also, so I mentioned this number 11, they use that. There are, this is a carbide scribe, piece of carbide welding rod that's been broken off, and then there's just a tip ground onto it. I've used that on occasion. Tattoo needles, which have their place. So this is the needle. This little section from here out is multiple little tiny needles. So this is actually a tattoo needle. We buy them like this. This is how they would go to the tattoo shop, and just cut this end off and stick it into a clutch pencil. And what tattoo needles do that's nice, you just have this really nice regular soft effect. So I've used it on occasion for blending, but I don't use it a lot. It has its place. Fiberglass brush, some of my friends use these. I don't like them because you end up with a lot of fiberglass little shards that you have to deal with, but a lot of people love these. Kind of a nice, soft, smooth effect with that. And you could also scratch on top of that to put in a little more detail, you know, put hair on the edges or something. It's just not a tool that I love to use, so. I use this blade for probably 90–95% of my work, unless there's a specific tool for something else. I'll show you the whisker tool. Let's see, they look like this now. They changed the way they look. They're now white and orange.
You have to sharpen them.
No, it's a ceramic blade. I don't even know if you can even see it. It's this tiny little piece right at the edge. These, I think with the new ones, you can buy a replacement blade, but I've not worn one of these out yet. I use it mainly just for whiskers. I have used it on an airplane because I wasn't sure they'd let me take a knife on, although I've taken a knife on since. But this I took on because nobody would give me a hard time. But for whiskers, you don't want to try and draw a whisker because they end up looking wiggly. You just have to do it. You just go for it. And it's kind of terrifying because you spent hours on a drawing. The last thing you're putting on is this whisker. And then after that, you have to seal it. And you're worried about the sealer going bad on you. So there's some terrifying parts of scratchboard, but mostly it's really great. Let me do some scratching on this cat where there's something happening. So here in this white part, I have to kind of sneak up on the white, if that makes sense. I don't want to come in and just clear it away because that, just like having this flat background, that looks flat. So I want to leave a little bit of texture in there. And I'm not scratching every hair, but I want to put the hairs in the proper direction. And I'm guessing on this because I can't really see it that well in the photo, but I've done enough cat drawings to sort of have an idea. But where I want it to go more white, I will just keep scratching.
I think you're quite a conversation starter when you do that on an airplane.
You know what? Nobody's ever, they've noticed the art, but they haven't ever said anything.
You're kidding.
No. And I've had this knife on an airplane. And I figured if there had been an issue at at TSA, I would just take the blade out and keep the handle. No big deal. I've got more tools in my check luggage. It's going to wherever I'm going.
And do you have any workshops scheduled?
I
think
don't.
We had Artley and LinkedIn.
Yeah, those actually never happened. We didn't get anybody to sign up. But here's what I can do. I'm trying to schedule one twice a year, just on a regular basis, either April or May, and then in the fall. But I can fit 4 people in my studio. So if you and 2 or 3 other friends want to come out, I can schedule a private for any time that works for everybody. It's usually, not everybody can make it on those other ones, so they're $95. That includes all your supplies except the reference photo. I don't want everyone drawing the same thing. I want you to bring something that you like. And I don't want you, if we're all drawing this cat, then you all compare it to me and you compare to each other. And there's enough difference in this medium that I want you to understand how to do the scratching. And I don't want cookie cutter stuff and everybody comparing to each other. I want you to just learn the process. And everybody's photo has different pros and cons. So we learn about that. And I use the ampersand products. I am an ampersand ambassador, but I love the products. They invited me to join their team as an ambassador. So I promote the products. But they're really good. They're archival. If anybody wants to come up and try scratching, you're welcome to. I've got plenty of sample boards. And you're welcome to take them with you too. Any other questions? You want to see me scratch more? Like I said, it's kind of like watching paint dry. You don't see a lot happening.
So if you make a mistake.
That's a good question.
You could go over.
Yeah. So here on this one, for example, we'll just say that is something I didn't want that light. Taking my trusty little pen. And it's not working. Sometimes the surface is really slick. That's a better pen. And even these will get a little clogged by the dust. But say I didn't, not even that it was a mistake, but I just wanted something darker in there. Then it's not quite dry, but I'm scratch anyway. So now I can come in and get another value, the width of the pen line or the knife in there. If there's an area that I really screwed up, this ink is exactly what they put on top of the board. So you can buy this ink. They make other inks that they use to colorize the scratch board. I prefer watercolor. These work, but I do have plenty of this. So this I could come in and paint a large area. You would still see the scratches if you held it in the right light, but you wouldn't feel them. You know, I passed that border and you can't feel it. So you can't cover up mistakes with this. I've done that a couple times. I was doing a demo of a cat. And I don't know, a section about yay big, an inch by 2 inch. I scratched the wrong angle and it wouldn't have bothered anyone else, but it bothered me. So I painted it over with the black ink and then just re-scratched it the right way. You could see the other scratches underneath, but in the big picture, you can fix mistakes. That's what I love about this. I don't really want buyers to know it, but I want students to know it's actually very forgiving. You know, every workshop I've taught, people have been surprised with what they can accomplish and how forgiving it is. Question? When you understand the difference between whiteboards and blackboards, people often think there's just black under here, but it's not. There's no white.
So on the whiteboard, how would you put, you would just put ink or color or whatever you would want on top of it and then let it dry?
Yeah, let it dry. You can tell when it's, well, it's cold in here. This is cold, but usually if it's still damp, you can tell with the back of your fingers. But yeah, you would just put, had this up before. Let me find one of these markers. Okay, so say I wanted a purple area. Just color it. And you see how streaky it is again, because the surface is really slick. Once that's dry, now most of this on here has been on for years. I don't know when I painted this board, but when I scratch it, it's going to come off. It doesn't stain. Some colors might stain, but if you're using the more translucent watercolors, you're not going to stain. So that's completely cleared off. And it was this kind of Indian brown color. Even the black. And this, basically texturizing. Now, has anyone used Aquaboard?
Yes, I have.
Okay, I will use it if somebody wants something really, really full color and not the scratchboard effect. You can scratch it a little bit, but it doesn't work real well for that. It's pretty hard and it'll dull knives super fast.
Well, I was just gonna ask you about that because I was thinking, can you do layers of color? I know my daughter, when she used to use oil pastel,
Mhm.
she would do layers of color and then she would go back and scratch
Oh,
into it.
yeah, it doesn't
won't
put down
work.
that much depth. Pastel puts down almost a
Yeah,
physical
it's like a
layer.
crayon
But yeah,
almost.
this doesn't put that much
Okay.
depth down.
So I won't bother trying
But on
that.
Aquaboard takes color super well and you
Yeah.
can lift it. You can scratch it a little bit, but it's really hard on the blades. These are much softer surface that scratch better. Scratching, yeah, sure.
Mr. Clean.
I've heard those work super well. I've not tried it. I'm sure it would work great on.
It works
Aquaboard.
great on watercolor.
Yeah, it even works on paper.
I ordered that clay board and I was wondering why it wasn't taking the paint very well, you know, because I
It's
thought it
so
was an
slick.
aqua
Yeah,
board.
it is
Yeah,
so
It's
slick.
very slick, thank you.
And that's why I did the texturing process with this little tiger cut. You know, and you have to go through process. And to me, it might seem a little insane. You've added all this color and then you scratch it off. But for me, that's how I work. I work in layers and I get the values. And the first pass, I don't worry about being perfect. I start to refine each step as I work through it. And get to where the finish is. What else can I tell you? Signature depends on where I'm signing. Sometimes if on a small piece, it'll just be my A and R. On a bigger piece, I'll do my A Ranlett. This tungsten scribe works pretty well for that. It's always best if there's a light place on the drawing, I'll sign it with a pen. But if it's in a dark spot, then I'll just do something like this. Because it's rounded, you can actually get directional. This blade is not directional at all. So if you have to change the direction of your scratching, you turn your board. You don't want to start cranking your arm around, but you can't do circles with this because it's flat. So you change the board angle. Scratchboard Society, we formed that 10, 11 years ago to promote scratchboard as a fine art. We've got a few brochures for them up here. There's different levels of membership. I am a master level, which is the highest level. Took some time to get there. But they require not just skill, but also that you teach, that you promote the art elsewhere, more than just having the skill.
Is this accepted in most shows?
It often goes in as drawing, or it depends on the categories. Like, we're talking about your show earlier. If there was a drawing category, it would fit into that. It just depends. We have a show every year of just scratchboard art as part of the society. And generally we have a gathering in some place where we get together for the weekend, opening reception, and nerd out over scratchboard, because I don't have neighbors for this. So we get together and have fun with that. Oh, the last 2 years it's been really minimized. Last year we had a live show, but nobody went to it. This year it was in Canada, so a lot of people couldn't go. Next year. Yes,
Do you have an example of your eight?
on my website. She's asking, I take ostrich eggs and I draw pen and ink drawings on them. And I've done that since I worked at the zoo many, many years ago. And they would commission them for awards, the Fun Run Awards, the golf tournament awards, or maybe a gift to a donor. And Betty White has one. They asked me to draw one for Betty, so she has one of my eggs. But yeah, there's a page on my website for the ostrich eggs. Other questions? If you want any of the stuff here in the corner, help yourself. If you feel like buying a card, there's a couple there. Yeah, I've got work at Old Town Gallery and High Hand Gallery. So if you're ever at either of those locations. And then the workshop to do at my studio. I live in Newcastle, so it's just in my little studio. Like I said, I can fit 4 people plus myself in there. But it works. That way you get a lot of attention, individual attention. Okay, well, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
I love it.